All right, guys, welcome back to Blurred Summits, episode number 42. So today we're going to be talking about optimism, more specifically the impact of optimism on mental health, physical health, and how to be an optimist. So, Abdul, what is optimism?
So optimism, dictionary definition, we'll just start off with it, is the hopefulness and confidence about the future or the successful outcome of something.
So yeah, you want to be an optimist, right? Like you should, like when it comes down, you should be an optimist. Yeah, you know, like with optimism, you can live with the positive side of life, right?
Yeah.
So we'll dive right in here to how optimism impacts mental health in school.
Are you an optimist, Hudson?
On some things I am, yeah.
Okay. No,
I am. Like in comparison to other people, yeah, I'd say.
Okay.
Compared to the average, I am, right?
That's fair.
Maybe like not on all things.
Person, that's true. Because I guess the average person just is really, really negative.
Yeah, like for me, it's like the COVID thing.
That's true.
I'm middle ground on it. Everything else, I'd say I'm pretty optimistic. That's the only one where I'm kind of like, don't want to get my hopes up, even though you might as well get your hopes up. But yeah.
Just put you on the spot right there.
Yeah, I know. That's my beliefs.
Okay, so you were talking about optimism and mental health.
Yeah, so
school.
Optimism plays a very important role in moderating like mental health and thoughts, right? So studies have found that there's an inverse correlation between optimism and having like depressive thoughts and like suicidal thoughts. So the more optimistic you are, the less likely you are to have these sad thoughts. I think that's just because optimism is basically the feeling of being positive, right? So if you're being positive and have a positive outlook on things that are going on, these mental thoughts or these negative thoughts aren't going to be trapped in your mind, right? So like being optimistic, you can just run through stuff and like, sure, you'll overcome challenges. But I think with optimism, it's more about facing those challenges and overcoming them as opposed to avoiding them, which is what pessimists do, right? Like the big things, they'll be like, okay, this seems something negative, so I'm just going to avoid it and say the whole world's bad. Optimists will look at it, be like, oh, damn, that's something that's going bad on. How do I face it, overcome it, and beat it?
Yeah.
So as a student in school, what are like something like in which area should I be an optimist?
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
Like I don't see why you shouldn't be an optimist in general, right? So like optimism, I guess you can't really put it in pick and little choose where you're just going to scatter it, right? It's who you are as a person.
Yeah.
So if you're an optimist in school, you'll kind of go into these tests saying positive thoughts, right?
You know, one of the things that like kind of pisses me off about some of the things that they educate us on is they give us a very pessimistic view of the world, right?
Yeah.
And they say like this bad thing is happening, this bad thing exists, all this kind of stuff, and they really push the narrative that the world really sucks. And the question is, let's say the world does suck, right? Let's say that you have, and you probably do have really good justification to be a pessimist. Why wouldn't you be an optimist?
Yeah.
Why would you even, like, isn't it almost kind of good to delude yourself into being an optimist even if the world kind of sucks? Because then you get to live a better life, right?
Yeah, like here, this point shows it. Like when comparing pessimists and optimists, pessimists are far more likely to be at greater risk of depressive and anxiety disorders, right? So being a pessimist, you kind of bring the bad towards you. You're asked, like, your energy is, hey, bad stuff, come towards me. I'll take it in and acknowledge it. Or actually maybe not acknowledge, but like take it in and let it take me down. Optimists are like, come at me, I'll fight it, overcome it, and come to the next thing, right? So I think it's very important with mental health and optimism that you can get through this stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Especially because it's a mental perspective. Like optimism is a mental thing. So, of course, it's going to be very closely related to mental health issues.
Yeah. So here, this point kind of shows, we'll go back to the school thing here. In general, optimistic students get better grades in school. The biggest one they found was math.
Oh, really?
Don't know the correlation between it, but...
Oh, you'd think it'd be like English or something more creative.
Yeah. But yeah, with that side of things, being an optimist, you get better grades. The one area, though, where they found that being a pessimist usually does better, ironically, is law school. So law school students ironically do better if they are pessimistic and compared to the optimists.
Do you think it's because, like, if you're a little bit more pessimistic and cynical, then you can kind of figure out like the bad things in other people?
Potentially.
And then because you're a lawyer, you're trying to take down this other person.
That's probably what it is. Yeah, it's kind of because you're being a pest, then you're viewing what other people are. I guess is right.
Yeah.
So then it kind of suits that thing pretty well.
Interesting.
Yeah. So have you ever thought caught yourself being like pessimistic towards like a paper, midterm, or anything really in general? And did that end up impacting the outcome of that event in like a negative way?
Yeah.
I feel like going into a lot of like bio exams, because like, you know, never being prepared, like especially with the test that you're not, like for me personally, like when I was in university, whenever I'd go, because I personally didn't have passion for that class, and so I would always go in like pessimistically because I wasn't prepared, you know, and I was like, oh, I'm probably gonna fail or whatever, right? So, and obviously that's what leads to that, but that it wasn't just going to that test; it was going into studying for that too, right?
Oh.
Right, and I feel like a lot of kids do this with like subjects like English, right? When they'll go into the essay thinking, oh, it's English. I suck at English. I'm not going to do well. Like, obviously, you're not going to do well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so,
Self-fulfilling
yeah, exactly. So I feel like it's something you learn as you go.
Yeah, that is interesting. Especially because, you know, like you said, if you have that pessimistic attitude when you're starting to study as well,
Yeah.
then you're pooched. Like, yeah, when you go to study, you're not going to be inspired to study. You're probably not even going to be inspired to take in the information.
You're saying you're finalizing your fate before
you even, you know, you could be amazing at that subject.
Yeah.
Who knows, right?
But I think, yeah, even in general, just being a pessimist, it kind of brings this lack of confidence with it when you're going into test taking, I found, right? It's like, so when you're pessimistic, you could be writing this test, you could know the stuff, but you'll be going like, I don't know this stuff. And then trick yourself into not knowing the answer, even if you know it. So being an optimist, you're like, I know this stuff, I feel good, the outcomes will come based on the work I put in. You do it, and then you'll remember the answers and you'll do good on the test.
Yeah.
It seems pretty linear between the two, right?
It really does. And it makes complete sense why the statistics that, you know, we sort of presented make sense.
Yeah.
They're not like things that don't make sense.
It's not
or
illogical.
Exactly, counterintuitive in
Yeah.
that sense. Absolutely. Yeah. You know, and optimism has a lot of things to do with physical health as well.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a direct correlation between people who are better physically, they're more
Yeah.
fit, they're more active, and being an optimist.
Yeah.
You know, they're finding that people who are pessimists are also more likely to have physical illnesses manifest themselves in the body through, you know, what they call somatic complaints, which is essentially like if you're pessimistic all the time, they're finding people who are pessimistic all the time, they complain more about physical badnesses in the body, right?
That don't actually really exist.
That don't actually really exist.
And we've all seen like those like videos of like people who are like told you're never gonna walk again, and then like amazingly like they learned to walk again, right? And that's obviously because they had the attitude that, you know what, if I work hard enough, even though people are saying I can't do this, I'm gonna try my best, right? And it ended up coming like if they were pessimistic, they would never even put the effort in the first place.
It's a guaranteed no.
Exactly.
At least if you're an optimist, we're not saying like you become an optimist, all of a sudden you're not gonna be paralyzed anymore.
Yeah, but the chance
the
increases.
Chance is there.
I think there's a one with two like cancer patients. After about a year, they found that those who are optimistic live much longer than those who are pessimistic, right? It's because optimism kind of brings with it this fighting aspect of your life where you want to fight towards what's good, right? Like optimists, they face the challenges kind of head on. And that with cancer, it's a terrible thing, right? But they fight through the challenge to get to the other side.
Yeah.
Where optimists, I guess, they kind of accept their fate and view things as an inevitability, like a certainty, when they're not necessarily that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyhow, sounds like we should be optimists.
Yeah,
Because, you know, fundamentally, there is no negative to being an optimist.
exactly.
Like Hudson's done the little bit of literature review, and it seems like there isn't any cons, right, Huddy?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's some of these things where they say there isn't a connection between kind of optimism and the physical side. The mental side is confirmed. Like it does really impact that. But when it comes down to it, the mental side, they're kind of like it might not. But there's no reason why not to follow and be an optimist. There's reasons not to be there's reasons to not be a pessimist because mental health, all that side of things. And maybe with that comes some physical losses. But with being an optimist, you get the good mental health side and you might get some physical benefits from it as well, right? So why not do that?
Yeah, and it's also, you know, if we just take a look at the examples around in our life, the people who are optimistic are doing better than the people who are pessimistic.
Yeah.
right? Especially in a time where you're in the middle of a pandemic. The people who are optimistic are going to be doing a ton better. If you're a student in university, if you're optimistic, you are going to be destroying the people who are pessimistic. Just by nature of you being an optimist, you are able to sustain things. We spoke about mental toughness earlier this week, and with mental toughness as well, being an optimist is an essential thing to mental toughness. Yeah. So the point of being an optimist doesn't just stop at optimism.
It's just not being positive about life.
And it leaks, optimism leaks into the other fields of your life.
Yeah.
Do you guys think, though, that being too optimistic can make you unrealistic?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah?
I think, if you get to wishful thinking, we spoke about this with Daniel Jamal last episode as well, where wishful thinking can become a destructive thing, And so I think optimism is good right up until the edge.
I think, but when optimism becomes bad, it's no longer optimism. It's wishful thinking. They're two completely different things, right?
That is true.
Where you come up to this border and you jump from optimism into this wishful thinking, which then you're deluding yourself and tricking yourself into these things.
Yeah.
But being an optimist, you're still being realistic about the things that are going on. You're just facing the challenges and putting a positive spin on them.
You're choosing to take the positives of the real world.
Yeah.
Whereas wishful thinking and delusion
you're bringing positives that don't exist.
Exactly. You're not talking about the real world.
Yeah.
That real world element is
your imagination.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, we're going to dive into some things about, how to actually be an optimist. So, first thing is to change the mindset. A lot of these things, it's a mindset change, Just wanting to do it, that's half the journey.
You got to trick yourself in. It's almost about tricking yourself into what you want to do, right?
That's tip number 2. Trick yourself into it, So, that's an essential thing to do. The second thing is notice your negativity, right? Changing mindset is very difficult, and it requires a lot of self-awareness, and sometimes it's hard for us to be self-aware. So noticing your negativity, that's the other 50% of the journey. You need to listen to what you say. And actually, a good recommendation is to track it in a journal. So physically write down the negative things that you say so that you can be aware of them. Because if you keep them in your memory, a month or two will go by and you'll start forgetting those things, or you will start to think that I'm a lot more optimistic than I actually am.
Yeah, you can't deceive yourself when you're writing everything you write down, right?
Exactly.
Because you could do it with both the positives and the negatives. Thinking of these negatives, write them down. Beside them, you could just do the positives you think of. And is the list balanced? Am I more positive, more negative? You can exactly see it, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I think just tracking it and tracking it and reviewing it too.
Yeah, right? You can't just track it and forget it, because then it's no different from putting it in your brain.
And also, maybe once a week, maybe even just once every 2 months, or once every
2 weeks,
or a month even.
Yeah.
And where you just look back, you don't make judgments about it. You just see, okay, this is what the stats are.
How am I doing?
These are the stats, right?
Yeah.
It's not I'm a good person, I'm a bad person, I'm a failure, I'm a successful person. It's just seeing, okay, objectively speaking, this is my reality.
How am I progressing on my path towards optimism?
Exactly. Also, I feel like you should take down, one of the ways a person can be an optimist is just noticing the good things that happen to you, right? Because when you're just focusing on the bad, right? The blessings you have, right? If you're just focusing on the bad, then that's going to be your outlook. That's going to be your mindset, right?
Yeah.
If you just focus on the test that you failed, right? And not focusing on other things that you're excelling in life, right? Then it's going to be very hard for you to be an optimist.
No, but I still think you do actually, even when you fail, you look at the failure and find the positive in the failure. 100%. Ignoring it, I'd still argue means you're still a pessimist.
Yeah.
But to be the optimist, you look at the bad thing and find the positives in it. That's what I personally feel the optimist is like that. Oh, I failed this test. I learned how I need to study better. I learned these challenges that I need to face, and I now know how to overcome them. Those are the positives, right?
Yeah. And, I think one of the keys to actually being an optimist is when you do fail or when you do have bad times or negative thoughts, is don't believe that these are who you are inherently.
They're not the be-all and end-all of who you are.
Right? That when you have a negative thought, that this is just a negative thought that you're having.
Yep.
It's not because I'm a negative person. Because if you believe that you truly, in your soul, in your being, your foundation is negativity. Fundamentally, I was born a negative person. Then you're never going to be able to change that.
Yeah.
Right? But if you see, I'm having some of these negative thoughts, but I can split myself from these negative thoughts. These are just things that maybe I'm saying.
They're just in your head.
Thinking. and they can be changed.
Yeah.
Right?
Something I just thought of is like naturally, I feel like naturally we're optimists. Like as kids, if you look at kids, right? Like kids are very innocent and they're always like focusing on the good, right? But you know, I think as we grow older, we like focus on like these negative things, and maybe that's when the shift happens. But like kids are generally just, you know, happy. They're like obviously there's there's times when they go, you know, they don't have the best day, but eventually I feel like it's easier for them to look at the good. You know?
I think.
So do you think that that's because as we grow older, the experiences that we have, maybe some of the negative experiences that we have, begin to change our mindset about the way that the world works?
I think society is innately pessimistic.
Yeah. Like, dude, look at the news, right? Like, most of the news is bad news, right? But obviously they're doing that because that's what makes them money. That's what gets them.
Well, yeah. Like, as we've grown up, we notice more and more the bad stuff that's happening, right? Because we're being shown a wider and more broad range of what's going on.
Interesting.
So I think, like I said, society is innately pessimistic. You just have to choose to be the optimist in the field of pessimists. Like, probably, numbers rough guess, maybe 1 in 10 are optimists, maybe.
Yeah. And you're right, like the news, they're putting out the negative stories because that's what the people want. Because not inherently, the majority of society is pessimistic. So if they want to give if they want to get the majority of their viewers, the majority of the stuff is going to be pessimistic.
Yeah.
Makes complete sense.
Like, it's like looking at, hey, how many more people died from COVID today?
Yeah.
Like, it's all these terrible things, and that's all they focus on, right?
So the negative stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the last sort of tip we have for you to be an optimist is give others and yourself positive feedback.
Mm-hmm.
You know, really with the positive there, you know, don't avoid giving negative feedback at all costs. We spoke about this in one of our earlier episodes about how to deal with people and how to treat other people. You know, positive feedback is the thing that can make the difference between the person being optimistic or pessimistic about a situation.
Yeah. You can control how someone else thinks by the way that you speak to them.
That's a lot of power to have.
So much power, right? Like, if you say, hey, you did okay, like, you could say whatever you want, like, maybe not the way you wanted to, but if you do this stuff, then you're on the right track to success. Mm-hmm. End on the high. They'll be like, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Give them a positive vibe, right? And help them towards what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because if you knock them down, oh, you did a terrible job, you suck, you're never going to be good at this. They're just going to completely...
You are raising an optimist.
Yeah.
Or what is it? You're breeding?
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
You're...
That's it.
Grooming an optimist. A pessimist.
Pessimist in that sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can innately choose how they want it, how they view the world. Or at least guide them in the way you want them to go, right?
Absolutely. And we do that with everyone in our network. And our network might be 50 people when we're younger, and when we're older, it might be 1,000 or 2,000 people that you communicate with in a year. So you have the potential within yourself to impact the lives of 1,000 to 2,000 people. Mm-hmm.
That's why even if you go to like Starbucks, positive with them, they're like, oh, they were kind of nice. That was good.
Exactly.
Something little like that, right? It's like, okay, there's some hope in the world.
100%. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. Today we spoke about optimism, why you should be an optimist. You know, change that mindset, see the world in a better view. It helps with your mental health, it helps with your physical health. There's pretty much no downfall to it, but there sure are a lot of downfalls to being a pessimist. If you guys would like to catch the full video podcast and catch us on YouTube, the full audio podcast is out on essentially all platforms. And be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok for daily content where we would love to get to know you guys more. Thank you.